Welcome to Yelling Into the Void, a podcast discussing and exploring topics in World of Warcraft. I'm Tevin. I'm joined as always by Scott.
Hello.
And we have pandas on the horizon for Classic. Those came out today. But, retail, Scott and I have a whole different plan for today's episode. And it revolves around monks, still, kind of.
You can never let them go, monks. You can never let them go. I'm old enough to remember when everyone was really mad about the whole panda expansion thing. And now the second round of it, everyone's like really happy.
Well, you don't think I played Pandaria?
No, I'm sure you did. Do you remember the BlizzCon announcement where I remember I was not at BlizzCon, of course, but I was in, I don't even remember where it streamed at that point because Twitch wasn't a thing. I guess it was probably
Justin TV.
I don't know. I mean, like that's when you had to buy the digital pass, and maybe they just literally had their own like native streaming service thing. That's very possible. Mm-hmm. But I remember people being pissed that we were going from badass war. This is the first rumblings of the what happened to the war in Warcraft was when we did pandas, and now look how far we've come.
Well, I will say there is a different standout thing from Pandaria that really holds the cake for negative press for me. Not necessarily the pandas, but all of the negative press and shit around the character boosts, because those came out at the end of Pandaria. So
I don't remember that. It's just how plugged in I was.
But anyways, so today news section should be fairly quick because mainly it is Mob Classics here. And if you play Classic, you should go play Mob Classic. Although maybe not today being Monday the 21st, because Wowhead has liked to tell me that the servers aren't very good right now. And there's about 8 different articles saying that they're working on the servers and performance. So maybe wait until the 22nd or 23rd, which, hey, it's the 23rd if you're listening to this right now. So go play Mob Classic.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Sorry.
Outside of that, though, not a ton of news on the retail front. There is a little bit, and we're going to touch on that here in like the main segment. Mainly some changes around raid buff stuff, specifically Mystic Touch. And then there's some other balancing and other things like that have came through, but nothing super substantial. So we do have a couple of interesting discussions today. And I guess let's start it off with the raid buff discussion.
Yeah.
And Scott, you want to explain what happened to Mystic Touch to prompt us wanting to have this talk?
Yeah, so Mystic Touch, for those that don't know, is a buff that all monks have. Basically, just you attacking the mob will make it take 5% more physical damage. They a week ago buffed it to 8% physical damage, and everyone lost their minds. And in the time since that, they've brought it back down to 5% physical damage. They listened to the community reaction, and there's lots of reasons why people were so negative about this, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But it basically brought up this idea of raid buffs. We talked about raid buffs in context of Death Knight a few weeks ago, but it brought up this idea of raid buffs just in general. Like, is this a good way of ensuring player and class involvement in raid? And I think this is a really interesting topic that has many, many sides to it. And sometimes I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I think the people talking about this, bless their heart, I love them, are talking about it from the perspective of not the normal people that play this game, which I like to think we are a closer representative of the normal people that play this game. And some of this talk around raid buffs just makes my head spin. But essentially, yeah, I think we want to just talk about this decision by Blizzard that they've basically continued to double down on, that the way to ensure class involvement in the raid is to give every class some sort of flat raid buff. And that way we need at least one of them in every group composition. And
yeah,
I don't know, I guess the monk thing in particular. So let's talk about the problem with what they did to Mystic Touch why they reverted it, right? So, and I think that leads us into what is the general problem with raid buffs, in my opinion. So essentially, they buffed it to 8%, right? Which means they made it stronger. So if you have physical classes in your group, which I think the ones that are most physical damage now are Hunter. Hunter do all physical damage, right? I believe Warriors do all physical damage. I think some rogue specs do, but not all of them. Like, it's surprising how little specs actually are doing physical damage these days.
Fully physical.
Yeah.
There's a lot of classes that do partial physical and magic damage, like Demon Hunter, for example, does a lot of physical damage, but they also do shadow damage and fell damage.
So essentially, the problem, as people are putting it, is the way classes are balanced in this game is they look at the class's overall output, and I think it's fair to say that when they balance damage in this game, they balance it assuming you have raid buffs, right? Because if they balanced it to where everyone was exactly equal without raid buffs, then, you know, a physical DPS class with Mystic Touch suddenly is 8% better. It's not actually 8% because you also have buffs that buff magic damage, but you get my point. Like, they have to balance it assuming all buffs. The problem with that is it means that if you make one buff substantially more powerful than another buff, for example, Arcane Intellect is 3% int and Mystic Touch was 8% physical damage, then suddenly the cost, the penalty of not having that buff in your group is incredibly more severe. Because if I'm trying to get a mage and a hunter to be equal on DPS and I have to use their buffs, I have to take their buffs into consideration. If I lose Arcane Intellect, the mage DPS goes down by this much. If I lose Mystic Touch at 8%, the hunter DPS goes down by this much, right? We are a video podcast, but my microphone's in the way, so I'm moving my hands up and down. The point is, the penalty for not having the buff for a physical DPS class when that buff is so good is more severe, and it ends up kind of inadvertently being a nerf to those classes, because they will be balanced. Their base kit will be balanced around the assumption that they have that bigger buff, and so those abilities comparable to other classes will be nerfed. That's a problem. And I'm glad they reverted it. I'm a little confused, actually. So maybe I'll just ask you this question. Why do we think they buffed it in the first place? Because I don't think it was because monks weren't represented enough in raid. Like every like CE level, let's say like Hall of Fame guild is running at least one monk. So it's not that they were trying to boost monk raid participation. I kind of feel like this was a Mythic Plus change. What's your opinion?
So let me tell you what I think they did, because we know that Blizzard doesn't really balance for Mythic Plus. Outside of the one change that they have done, which just so happens to be a raid buff change, which is why I think you might be onto something, but nerfing Arcane Intellect was almost 100% guaranteed to be because of Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
And that is because for I don't know how long now, it has been expansions at this point. Caster groups have just been better than physical groups. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted to rein this in, which means what raid buffs do you have to hit, or what raid buffs do you have to hit to impact caster groups? Well, Arcane Intellect gives you intellect. The other one is Demon Hunters. And we have had caster groups without Demon Hunters when we have like bears in the meta, or we have paladins in the meta. You never have a caster group without a mage. And so they went after Arcane Int.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I almost wonder if this isn't necessarily a Mythic Plus change. And what they did was they took data from the raid and they looked like in an average group comp in Mythic that has like what we consider to be an acceptable composition, what percentage of their damage was magical, what percentage of their damage was physical, and they tried to get the physical portion to be more closely resembling the magic portion. Now, I don't think that this is the right way to do it. And the reason for that is when you make these small tweaks, it's like when they do an aura change to a class, you know, a 1 or 2% aura change, then suddenly makes something that wasn't viable before potentially viable. And then now you're doing essentially a 1 to 2% aura change, well, in this case, a 3% aura change on all classes that are physical. So the likelihood that you're going to cause something exceptional to happen is going up astronomically.
Yeah.
So I don't, first off, I don't think that this is that good of a change in the first place. I am happy that they reverted it. That being said, for the fact that Mythic Plus groups are still predominantly caster groups, and that I think the caster DPS have a lot more going for them, mainly because they assume Wind Fury gives a lot of value to physical melee DPS. There's never going to be a world in which these two things are even, because Wind Fury is good for some people and bad for others. And then classes that do split damage benefit from both, you know, the Demon Hunter debuff and the Monk debuff. So, yeah, I mean, this is why we're having the conversation. Like, is this good for the game? Is this a good reason to be bringing classes, or bringing classes rather than bringing people and stuff like that? And I just don't know if it is.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that I've heard echoed in many places is raid buff should be just good enough to guarantee that class gets a spot in the raid and no better, right? And that's an opinion I can get behind. But let me give you another opinion, which is raid buffs suck. So here's the part of it that I think kind of made me go crazy a little bit, is listening to people talk about this, and they're talking about like class stacking or ensuring coverage across all classes. That's great for Race to World First and top end guilds, Hall of Fame guilds. The majority of the people playing this game have trouble getting a group of any classes together, of any variety. Like, I mean, do you remember when we were trying to get a mythic group together and we were having to go down, like, not only try to get the people, but also look at the comp and what we need to recruit for, and like, just this is the part of the game that I think sometimes drives me crazy, because it's like the people at the top are playing a completely different game where they just have a deck full of cards that are every single class, and nobody else has that. So you start talking to me about class stacking and raid buffs, and we need coverage, we need we need groups to bring one of every single class, and I'm like, more than that, don't we need groups to bring one of every single person that they can find? I mean, we already have to do like tank, healer, melee DPS, range DPS, and we already have to kind of try to balance and even these things out as much as possible. And that's already very difficult for the majority of people that play this game. And now you're telling me we're like really super worried about like making sure that raids bring one of each class. Like, I don't have that privilege. Sorry. So that's not a solution I need solved for me. And I don't think that's true for the vast majority of the players. So like, I think the ecosystem of the game is just better, in my opinion, if we don't worry about that. And I mean, we haven't even talked about the negative effect on Mythic Plus this has. I mean, you kind of entered into it with those two specific buffs, but it's also just like, you can't have full coverage of buffs in Mythic Plus ever. And so you're already kind of having, like, when you're trying to put a makeup of a team together, you're already having to like think of all these different things and how they affect things, and they don't matter in the low end very much, but it just messes everything up. And I just don't think that this is the correct solution to solve the problem of ensuring class inclusion, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so there is an argument to be had, and for people who have the ability to have people who play multiple classes and have the 20-man roster, I guess more like a 25-30-man roster, and have the ability to do these things, like you said, this might be fine. Like, this might be a fine way to do it, and that ensures you're not having 19 mages in one raid. But again, like you said, that's not the majority of people. And as somebody who has tried to put a raid together to do Mythic, I think that this is annoying.
Yeah.
So I think that a better solution to this is get rid of like the flat raid buffs, because first off, they're not equal. They're not equal in the slightest.
No.
Like, are you telling me Blessing of the Bronze is as good as Arcane Intellect?
Well,
Really?
that's the thing, is that the argument here is like what is the thing that gets you your spot in the raid, right? Because some classes have these hour-long raid buffs. Some classes have utility. Like warlocks don't have a buff, but warlocks provide so much utility with hellstones, with gate, with just like wipe protection. Like that, you will always have a warlock no matter what. But at the other side of that is, man, isn't it fucking annoying to play this game when you don't have a warlock in your team? It sucks. And it's like, wouldn't it be better if some of that was baked into something that's shared among multiple classes or something like that? And then I think, to get back to your point, like the evoker, like it is not the Blessing of the Bronze raid buff that gets evoker brought to raid, right? It is the other utility they offer. It's either in fights like Razageth, they can move people around. I don't think they've ever sat an evoker. I think last tier was like the first tier that an evoker was sat on a boss, and usually like evoker's utility or raid buff is that one evoker spec has been broken for every single raid since evoker was introduced, and so that's how they always kind of end up in the roster. But yeah, I know it's harder, but I think it's like, so I guess what you said was you don't want 19 mages in a raid, right? Like that's what you said. And I think that's true, but also like for the health of the game, do I fucking give a shit if the Race to World First puts 19 mages in their raid? Like those people are psychotic anyway. And look, I say this as a person who loves watching the race, who has a lot of fun watching the race. And I also agree that like the race is more fun, just like MDI is more fun when you have lots of class variation and that kind of thing. Is just, it's more fun to watch that. And so I understand the desire to make that choice, to make the race better to watch, but also like, at what point do we say the efforts to make things better at the top end is ruining the game for everyone else? And like, that's a very extreme statement. I don't think raid buffs are like ruining the game for the majority of the player base. I just think they're silly, and I don't think they're necessary. I don't like them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. In my ideal world, right, you have, if we want to have something for this, so I guess my ideal world is they just go away and people bring the player instead of the class, and we move on with our fucking lives. But if you want to have something that gets classes brought to raids, rather than having these like damage increases or things like that, I would love to see it be more akin to what a warlock is, where it's like warlock has never needed a buff necessarily. I mean, they have had buffs in the past, like they used to give int and everything. But anyways, in the current version of the game, they haven't needed a full-on buff because they bring so many other unique things to warlock. It's the argument with Death Grip all over again, but Death Grip is nowhere near the same power level as Demonic Gateway that can move your entire raid across a huge distance. Like, it's not even remotely close. And then on top of that, you get Soul Stone, and the fact that warlocks are like fucking unkillable. Like there's no comparison, but I would like to see things more like that, where it's like they each bring their own unique kind of thing to the raid, which is more of like a quality of life. It's nice to have it, but if you don't, like, the bosses aren't impossible. Which warlock's a bad example, because some bosses on Mythic, hard Mythic, Race to World First Mythic are impossible without gate, but to each their own. So that's what I would like to see. If we have to have something tied to classes, I would rather it be more that than we're giving you a buff because we have to, because you don't have one and nobody will bring you otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, Mark of the Wild is like balancing and health of the game aside, Mark of the Wild is boring. It's like I'm not doing anything. Like, okay, cool, I put up my buff and everyone has 3 more verse now. Hooray! I've brought my contribution to the raid group. Like, and I think Druid's an interesting example because they do have other utility, like Stampeding Roar can also be very good. And like, yeah, I would agree with you. It's harder, but I would much rather these kind of utility things be the focus of how we get class involvement, is that each class brings something unique to them that is not just boop, you have more hit points now, boop, you have more intellect now. Like it's really interesting because there's a part of me that is yelling at myself right now, because one thing that I always found interesting about MMOs, like going back to early World of Warcraft to EverQuest, is the idea of these classes having these buffs and like the game having many different buffs for many different people, and like the thing in Classic where you're running by someone while questing and you give them a buff and it's like, oh cool, I got this buff for a certain amount of time. That happened in EverQuest all the time too, and it was like this fun part of the game that made it feel like more of a world and allowed people to interact with each other. And there's a part of me that says, oh man, like we've kind of slowly taken that away over time, and that sucks. And that's true, but this is just such a different game now. And so like, I continue to wonder about their decision to really double down on this. Like since Dragonflight is when they brought Mark of the Wild back. And they really kind of just doubled down on this. They finally relented and gave Shaman one. I'm guessing at midnight they're just going to give DK a raid buff. Like I'm guessing that's where we're headed.
They're just going to give him Horn of Winter back. They're going to make it give like melee attack power or some shit like that. And that's, I mean,
I guess just like you can look at the stats and you can see that it is certainly true that there are CE guilds out there right now who have killed Galliwix without a monk, right? Or without a demon hunter. Like it is not impossible to kill these high-end bosses without a comp that includes one of each class because of this raid buff thing. But it is rare. Like there's, I think maybe the last time I looked, it was like 50 guilds that their first Galliwix attempt didn't have a monk in it or something like that. And it's just like, this is the type of thing that makes me look at Mythic raiding and just go, I don't want to do this. I just don't want to do this, because the idea of having to field 20 people, and as you said, 25 people, but then also having to have those people either multi-class or just having to find people that don't multi-class, but now we have to recruit. Now I just don't only have to find someone that fits with the vibe of my group and can make my raid times, and is going to do the homework needed, but also I need to make sure they play the class I need or the spec I need. And it's just like, that's just another added thing to this whole process. And I'm just like at the top end, I understand it. I get it. But like for the average person playing this game, this is just another speed bump, another headache. And it's just silly to me. I just don't think you can balance with it or without it. I just don't like them. I just don't like them. Either do away with them or bring back the scrolls that are just as powerful as them. I still think that's stupid, by the way. Like that at the beginning of every fucking key, we're going to have to pull out scrolls and throw 6 buffs on everyone. Like that's stupid. I don't think that's a real solution, but I like it better than the way it is right now.
What about one scroll that gives all raid buffs?
That would be great. Let's do that. The Mythic Plus, it only works in keys too. That would wouldn't that maybe? Do you think this would solve the problem if like this is a solution for raid, right? This is a solution for raid to ensure coverage in raid. Would just having a only usable in a dungeon scroll that gives the suite of raid buffs. I don't know how they would work with the debuffs. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
We might have a season where mage isn't in the top group for once if we do that.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not, because Blizzard loves mages and they're always broken as fuck. But that being said, they wouldn't be required anymore.
Yeah. It's the same. It's the same with Bloodlust. Like, I mean, that's the thing though. Bloodlust, they've recognized over time that it is not good for the health of the game for one class to provide that. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about because, you mentioned it hasn't always been this way. You mentioned that Warlock used to give certain buffs. And like, it reminded me, thinking about this conversation and preparing for this conversation in my head, it reminded me of what things were like in Cataclysm, because we played that not too long ago. And look, I'm not saying that system was ideal, because you basically have to get like a spreadsheet or a program to figure out what all raid buffs you're getting. And that was clunky, and that's kind of the way they moved away from it. But I do if we're going to stick with buffs, I do kind of like the idea that multiple classes can cover multiple things, right? That you are not stuck, that only this class brings this. I think that was an inelegant solution ultimately in like the Cata times, but it was a solution.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a middle ground here, right? In Cata, the reason you need a spreadsheet is because each different spec brings a different buff, and specific like talent builds of a specific spec bring a buff that other, like, even though you're playing the same spec, you have a different talent build, you don't bring the, like, that's the problem. Also, there were like 17 different buffs you could get. So like the middle ground here is have it be the 15 or whatever buffs that we have now, like all of the raid buffs. I'd said 15 because I think that's the number of classes we have right now. I don't
Isn't it 12
remember.
or 13?
Or yeah, 12. But anyways, have it be 12, whatever, 11 because Warlock doesn't bring one, and then spread those out amongst different classes. And it's okay, I think, if you have one class bring two, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the solution, because I'd rather them just fucking get rid of the thing.
Oh no, but they might set that class and put in another mage in the race to world first. Oh no, I don't care. I don't care. Yeah, I don't know. This is a complicated thing, and it's not like they make decisions in a vacuum, right? They're obviously looking at a lot of data that we don't see. But I just can't help but, like, from the moment I got Mark of the Wild back, I was just like, what is the point of this? Like, okay, cool. It's just a button I press before I go into the key, and then I have to remember to press every time someone dies, or else someone will speak in Discord, Mark, we need Mark. And it's just like, it's not fun. It's not engaging gameplay. It's not anything. It's just a button I remember to press, and that's it. And I don't know. I just, there's got to be a better way. And I think, like you said, it is much more difficult to base it on just utility. Because, I mean, you have, like we said, you have a lot of classes, so you'd have to figure out, like, there's only so many things you can do in a raid. So, like, how...
I mean, shit, hunters used to be brought to raids for the sole fact that they were a ranged class that could move while doing their rotation.
Sure, yeah.
So they were brought to do mechanics. Like, that in and of itself is enough. Like, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I
don't know.
Is it so bad? Is it so bad if a class is sat on the race to world first kill? Right? On like the kill, the world first Dimensius kill. Let's say they don't have a Death Knight. Right? Is that the end of the world? It's the race to, like, I mean, the problem is actually that so many people base what is good or bad off of what the best players are doing, right? Like, the race to world first brings two Mistweavers. Mistweaver has to be the best healer in the raid. Well, I mean, Mistweavers are really good, certainly very good, but the reason why they stacked Mistweavers is because not only Mistweavers putting out good healing, but before they got nerfed, early in season 2, they were also doing very, very, very high damage in the raid. And in the Race to World First, that matters a whole lot because you need every little bit of DPS you can find. And so having 2 healers that are putting out insane healing numbers while also doing very good DPS became very important. And like, that is not a thing that majority of players will ever be concerned about. When is the last time you looked at the healer DPS on your raid? It very rarely matters whatsoever. But like, that's the community perception. They see Mistweaver in the Race to World First. They say Mistweaver's the best. They're broken. They're unbalanced. Yada 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 yada. So like, it's almost as if they have to balance for Race to World First, knowing it is going to impact the rest of the game in a stupid way. And I kind of hate that, but it might just be the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I don't know, because you're always going to have that. Like, this argument is always going to be made where the meta gets made by the people at the top, because people, like, the people at the top are the ones streaming. They're the ones making content, the ones people are watching, the guide writer. Like, those are all normally top end players, or at least better than the people consuming the content that they're making. Sure. And so you get yourself in this position that they are showcasing their composition. And so people are like, oh, well, that's what we must do. But what you're not seeing is exactly what you were saying, where it's like Mistweavers are brought for damage. Or, for example, on Ansurek, Warriors were playing Fury because they were extremely good. Their cooldowns lined up perfectly with every single ad spawn. And they could just, boom, ads were dead every single time.
Yeah.
So they had 2 Fury Warriors. Well, now, even though Arms was kind of doing better than them at that point in the game, well, now everybody's like, oh, Fury's broken. They need to nerf Fury. Well, the reason Fury looks so good is because it was perfectly made for that fight. It just lined up perfectly. It doesn't necessarily mean that one class is better than another class or things like that. So that is, I think, kind of the trap that we get ourselves into a lot, is the way that the world of the internet works now, and everybody looks to guides and looks to things like that. We get ourselves really stuck on what a meta is. And as somebody who likes to abuse the meta in Mythic Plus, I get it. I really do. I understand why people are like this. If it's going to make your time playing the game easier, then why not make your time playing the game easier?
Yeah.
But it doesn't, if you're just playing the meta because it's the class that you see people playing and you don't understand why, then you would probably be better off playing something that you're more comfortable on.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, so I guess, should they balance the top around that fact?
I honestly think that balancing for the top end is just not good.
Yeah.
Because in Mythic Plus, scaling solves it for you. You don't need to balance for them. And in Raid, the race isn't a WoW sanction, like, it's not a Blizzard sanctioned event.
Yeah.
So why do we care? Blizzard obviously does care, and it brings a lot of publicity to the game, and I think it's smart for them to care. But they put themselves in this like, well, we don't really do anything for it, but actually we make the entire raid for it, but we're not going to balance for it. So I don't understand. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't think we've solved anything today, but I think they're gonna continue down this path, it seems like. And I agree with you. It's very heartening that they realized the Mystic Touch decision was bad, and that it was going to make the game worse, and they went back on it. But I mean, as long as these things continue to be in the game, there's going to be problems that arise around them. And I'm not saying tomorrow we need to rip raid buffs out of the game, because I think just removing them from the game without doing anything else does a thing where it leads to this feeling of homogenization and stuff like that. And that's not what I want. But yeah, I think looking at Warlock or even Evoker, and Death Knight to a certain extent, and looking at the utility that can be brought by classes and saying, isn't this a great way? Like, what feels better? What feels better, right? Going into a key that needs a gate or a grip and being like, oh, it's great that we have a warlock in the key today. Or going into a key and say and there's a druid is like, oh, thank God, I have 3% extra verse. Like, what feels better and what is more fun, right? I mean, this is a game after all. It's supposed to be fun. So like we should always strive to move towards the fun choice. And I think utility is just infinitely more fun than flat percentage buffs.
Yeah. I press a button and forget about it. Things I think are just bad.
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Like you said, I don't think we really solved anything today. But that being said,
we can't.
It was an
week.
interesting discussion.
Yeah.
We so for everybody listening, Scott and I have talked about raid buffs like endlessly over the past however long we've been playing the game together now.
Yes.
Which I don't remember how long that's been. But anyways,
3 years?
This is always something that comes up. We always talk about this. It's almost like on a season by season basis at this point. And it always starts off with us talking about raid. And then we start looking into Mythic Plus and we're like, God, that's even more annoying. And like, for example, in Dragonflight Season 3, when Demon Hunters had double sigils, like not really raid buff discussion, but essentially the same thing where Scott and I are just both like, this changes everything. This changes everything for Mythic Plus. Demon Hunters are going to be fucking broken.
Yeah.
And then, well, lo and behold, Demon Hunters were fucking broken.
Easiest prediction to make ever. Yeah. It's so very obvious. Yeah. And I mean, like, there's this kind of sort of is in the raid buff conversation, but, you know, we talk about things like lust and the difficulty we've had in our group in the past of getting someone who was playing a class that could bring lust. Like, shouldn't I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but let's just say it to say it. Shouldn't every single role have the option to bring every single buff? Like, isn't it a little ridiculous that in 2025 there is no tank that can lust? Isn't that a little silly?
Yeah, I think that things that integral to the game, like lust, where you're likely not doing keys without it. I mean, that's not true. People do keys without it all the time.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, groups want a lust.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is that integral to the game, that should be a spec or a role should have it or something like that rather than a spec or a class has it. So like this is something I've floated in the past. I don't know how much I agree with it, but like if we gave tanks bloodlust and we gave all healers B-res, would it be that bad? I mean, one argument is the homogenization thing, and I don't like that part about it. But also, you've solved the problem of not having a B-res or a bloodlust in every single key group if you do that.
Yeah, I just don't think a thing like bloodlust or B-res is like what people actually mean when they say homogenization. Like, I think they would make the argument, but I just don't think people actually mean that when they say it, because like here's the thing that is important to me from a healer's perspective with class homogenization. Every single healer should play differently and should have different strengths and weaknesses as far as the profile of damage that they can handle. And if a change was made to the game that changed that up, that said all healers deal with all types of damage equally, I would feel like the healing in this game has become too homogenized, and I would not like that. But like the ability to bring a person back from the dead in combat once every 10 minutes is not like it's not like an identity to me of healing. And so would I feel like healing is homogenized because shamans and priests can do that now? No, I would not. Like I just agree with you here. I just think the healing class is not a support class, but a support class, and they should all be able to be res. I just think it's true, because that guarantees, like, you're so right. If you attach this stuff to the role, it guarantees that every single group will have this, right? If you give bloodlust to tanks, every single Mythic Plus group has a Bloodlust. Every single Mythic Plus group has a B-Res. And then you can find some other utility to give to the DPS, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be because, like, on one hand, it's like, what are the useful things in keys? Mind Soothe. Well, probably shouldn't give that to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit to this
Gate.
stuff, right? Like Mind Soothe.
Yeah.
Mind Soothe to me is an identity thing that I think matters to me.
Yeah. But no, so I completely, like, you and I have been and probably always will be in agreement on this. And it's kind of hard to be the devil's advocate on something that you feel very passionately about. But hopefully we did it a little bit of justice. If you guys have things that you want to add in the comments, please, by all means, feel free. I do think that, Scott, we should touch on something else rather than talk about raid buffs for an hour and a half, though. What do you think?
I suppose. No, yeah. Let's hop to something else.
So, the next thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, and honestly, we can probably keep this one fairly short, but Scott and I have been in this position to where we were running a guild, and the guild kind of like lost interest, and quit, after we got AOTC, which like is fine. People are playing this game, and if they're not having fun playing the game, I want them to quit.
Mm-hmm.
But we were in this spot where we were like kind of guildless, and neither one of us really want to put a team back together. We don't really want to have to be the one to wrangle the cats. So we were going into season 3 and still are kind of going into season 3 guildless. And that has put us in a very odd spot. Namely, like, we still want to get AOTC, but raid has always been just like the kind of secondary, just chill with friends for 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever it is, kind of thing for you and I. But it's not something either one of us wants to go a whole season without. So it's been a little bit of a struggle and interesting, to say the least.
It is a very odd spot, but I think it's a very common, relatable spot. I think this is what most of the people that play this game go through, right? Most of the people that play this game do not have a regular group of people they play with all the time. They have, maybe a few friends here and there, but they kind of guild hop and look around and are constantly looking for new people. And it is a thing that I think is not talked about very often, again, because most of the people that make content for this game are people that do it for a living and therefore have a great many of connections with all the other people that do it for a living. And they always have a home somewhere, even if it's not like in a content creator guild. There's just, most people have a big enough social web that create content, that this is not a problem. But that's not us, right? That's not us. And so yeah, we're in a situation where we're like, we got to find new people to play with, and that's always a very stressful situation. Like, this ties into the raid buff discussion, that you have to find a group of people that you vibe with, that can play the same times you can play, and that need the classes or roles or specs or whatever that you want to play. That is hard. It's very hard. And I'm kind of trying it out with this new group that I've only played with a couple times now, and we'll see how that goes. But like, it's just like, it's a core part of this game, actually, that I wanted to talk about because no one does, or not very often, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the thing that I want to give people, if you don't know and you are looking for a guild, there's a guild tool in the game, but honestly, please stay away from that. If you are looking for a guild and are actively trying to find a guild that either does keys or PvPs or raids or whatever, please look to places like, there's a guild recruitment Discord, which is probably what I would say is like the best place to find casual guilds. If you're wanting to do more like pushing for CE and stuff like that, that's there too. But I think that you're more likely to find super hardcore guilds looking at things like Raider.io and guild recruitment posts there, or even on like Warcraft logs and stuff like that, and reaching out to them might be better, because a lot of guilds will have like on their actual guild page, you know, ways to get into contact with them, what they're looking for, and everything like that on Warcraft logs. So there's different avenues, but really I just wanted to take the time for anybody who doesn't know that these tools are there to say that they are. I mean, Reddit has recruitment as well, but definitely look outside the game to try and find guilds now, especially 100% now that things are cross server, cross faction.
Yeah.
Like, it is going to be infinitely easier for you to go look at either the recruitment Discord or a Reddit recruitment, a recruitment Reddit, than it is for you to go through that old in-game tool.
Yeah, man. I mean, the group that I'm playing with, like, they're a horde guild on another server. And I am alliance on a different. So like 5 years ago, I just would not be able to play with these people at all. And the idea that I can do that now makes it so much easier to find a group. Like, it's still really hard. I think, like, yes, all these tools exist. Yes, I spent hours like perusing this recruitment forum or recruitment Discord. Hours, like literal hours. And it's like looking through, oh, this is almost perfect, but X or Y or Z, like it's very hard. And every time I have quit this game in the past, every time I have quit this game is because the people that I played with left, or I lost the group that I was playing with. And that's a really shitty feeling, because it's like, it's not even I'm not enjoying the game anymore. It's just I need it. The game is most fun when you're playing with other people and you lose that. And it's like, I don't know. I am a social person, right? Like, I like talking to people a lot. And so, like, it's not a huge deal for me to meet new people, but it is still a little awkward. Like, I still am much more quiet the first time I meet people than I am any other time. And like, and I'm an extroverted social person. So like, I can imagine how difficult this is for people that are a little more shy, a little more introverted. It's hard. It is hard. This is a social game, but sometimes it is very hard to be social. And I'm not saying any of this to be like something needs to be fixed or something needs to be done here. It's just kind of like the sometimes daily ins and outs and weekly and monthly ins and outs of playing an online game like this, right? It's just, sometimes you need to find a way to branch out.
Yeah, and you're almost never going to be in the guild that you first joined, like 5 expansions from now. Like, does it happen? Yes. I think that is very rare, though. But yeah, it's an interesting spot to be in. Hopefully, Scott and I have solved this for ourselves. But if you find yourself in this position right now and you are looking for a guild, really this segment is here, I guess, to say, don't give up. Keep looking. It does take some time. You might not vibe with the first group, but definitely find a place where you feel like comfortable with everybody and everything is working out and they have relatively the same goals as you. And hopefully everything will look good for you.
It's so hard, man. It's like all the things you listed is so many things that you need a large group of people to all match you on. And that is never easy, ever.
Yeah. I mean, 10 at a minimum if you're trying for AOTC and 20 at a minimum if you're trying for Mythic. By the way, Blizzard, 10-man Mythic, please.
Do it.
But yeah, so Scott and I are in this little limbo area, and we just kind of wanted to have a little bit of a segment to, I guess, touch base with the people who are listening, not necessarily to like have a complaining segment or really provide any solutions, but just to let you know, like, this is something that happens, and it is something that is probably going to happen to everybody who plays this game at some point. So keep your head up and keep looking.
Yeah, I mean, and just like, you go back and listen to our first episodes as we were heading into the War Within, we had a very aggressive goal. And not even close, right? Like we wanted to create our own guild and be pushing towards CE this upcoming patch, and like it's literally the exact opposite of that now. So like sometimes the things you want in this game just don't work out, and sometimes it's because of the choices you made or the actions you made, and sometimes it's just like the cards that you're dealt, and it can be a bummer. But yeah, you just got to keep, if you want to play the game, if you're having fun playing the game, there's ways to find people. It's not always easy. You have to kind of allow yourself out of your shell a little bit. You're definitely going to have moments where you're like, man, these people are cool, but they're not like my people. And like, well, they will be if you give them a chance. You just gotta do that. So I'm saying this to other people, and I'm also like saying it to myself at the same time, reinforcing this with myself, because yeah, I mean, like, to be honest with you, like, I came back to this game in season 3 of Shadowlands. I raided with one other guild that I really wasn't vibing with until I found the guild that I was in for 3 years, essentially. So like I've been playing with the same group of people for a while now, and the idea of not playing with those people is a little weird. I'm still gonna play, like I'm still gonna play with you. Like we have a small group of friends. I think we're still gonna all like hang out together pretty regularly, but it's not gonna be the same, and that's a weird feeling. And it's like just something you got to work through.
Yeah, the like 10 plus people who you surround yourself for hours on end during a raid are going to be completely different. Yeah, that's just kind of odd.
Yep.
But that does bring us kind of a decent segue into this, because you were talking about this upcoming season. And I kind of want to have a quick discussion, and you and I can probably talk until we're blue in the face about this, but I want to talk about the seasonal model. So we have had comments in the past talking about like seasons, and you know, some are like, oh yeah, I'm excited for the new season, or some of them are like, I wish seasons didn't exist. And so I kind of want to just chat with you a little bit about the seasonal model that, to be honest, it's not just WoW. A lot of games are going to this seasonal model. And see kind of like what your thoughts are around this, because if I could be so bold as to say on the surface, and please don't get your pitchforks out and run at me for this, but I like this seasonal model, and I can go into detail on why, but I kind of want to see where's your head at, Scott.
Yeah. So, I think when we talk about stuff like this, the thing we need to remember is that like these decisions are not made in a vacuum, right? It's not like someone woke up at Blizzard HQ one day and said, you know what this game needs? This game needs clearly defined seasons. It is a series of interconnected choices over the course of many, many years that leads you where we are right now. And I think the reason why there are seasons in this game, and the reason why seasons have become a thing in gaming in general, is just a reflection of the way people interact with games, especially online games in the year 2025. That there's an expectation of kind of ongoing services in a way that is not the same as what ongoing services and MMOs were in the past. There is an expectation of a return to parity that needs to happen, a reset, because that is ultimately what a season is. It's not just new stuff, because there's been patches in World of Warcraft from the very beginning, that the content patches that brought new things, that brought new raids and new zones and new, like this has been a thing that has been true since 2004. But really what we mean when we say seasons, I think, is built-in resets in the game, that a person can come back to a game not at the beginning of an expansion, but at the beginning of a season, and catch up, essentially. And this is a very long-winded answer, sorry, but from the perspective of that, of like of a constant on ramp into a game, I think they're great. I love them. I think it's like, and it provides something for me and for many other players out there that either for one reason or another have been forced to leave a game behind at some point, that they don't feel they need to wait until for 2 years. Like, cause before the seasonal model, there would be times when I would think, oh, maybe I want to return to World of Warcraft, or maybe I want to return to Final Fantasy 14. Oh, but like they're midway through the expansion right now. Do I really want to like play a game of catch up, join, like level up, and then have to do all of the progression through the expansion that no one's really doing anymore? Do I really have to go through all that? Well, now the game is divided into 6-month chunks. And so I don't have to do that anymore. And so I think this is great. I think this is a reflection, like we said, of just the way modern gaming works. And I don't have a problem with it at all. I will say it does have an effect on an MMORPG. And the effect on an MMORPG is that it feels less like an MMORPG. Is that it feels less like a continuous world. It feels it makes the RPG elements more gamified than they are like just an expression of you and your character and this feeling of advancement. It takes all that stuff away. It does. It absolutely does. And so I constantly kind of am at war with myself with this, where I'm like, I probably couldn't play this game without the seasonal model, but would the World of Warcraft be better if it was more like the system that it was on release? And I go back and forth on that. There's a part of me that gets the nostalgia like thing in my head that's like, man, remember when these games were worlds, and like, you had to progress through everything, and that piece of gear mattered because you're going to be wearing that thing for 3 years, and like all this stuff sounds good and it was fun at the time, but I just wonder if like that ultimately is actually like good. Is that actual good design? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so here's my 2 cents on this. One, I completely agree with the wanting to get something and know you're going to have it for a while and it be meaningful and be an upgrade that you're proud to have. I mean, shit, I play RuneScape for the love of God. Like, there are so many things in that game that have been power crept, but you're still happy to get the level below it because you know you're going to have it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I get that. And I 100% agree that is currently gone in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And there is nothing. I guess there are a few things that travel between like season to season, but they feel like more like annoyances than, oh, I'm glad I achieved this thing and I'm going to have it for a while now. Because at best, it's just an item better than everything else that you can wear in the current season. At worst, when the season rolls over, it's an item you're forced to wear, even though it's worse than the shit that you're currently getting.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that it's just annoying. Like, that is why it's kind of bad right now. So that being said, it would be nice, or it would be kind of cool if we had something that felt meaningful like that. But like you said, it puts us in this trap of, okay, well, if you take a break at any point ever, you have the potential of missing out on that. And if you miss out on that, then now you're having to go back and do that. And if that thing requires you to do a raid or something else that nobody's doing anymore,
Mm-hmm.
well, now you're having to find people when the population is so low of people who want to do that.
Yeah.
And that causes issues. So I guess the way that I see the seasonal model and the reset and everything like that is not so much like I tie my character's gear to my character anymore. I still get happy when I get, specific trinkets in a season or whatever. I don't feel like that joy is gone. But the way that I see it is it constantly gives me an ever updating goal. And that is honestly the key reason why I enjoy seasonal gameplay in WoW,
Mhm.
because if I don't have an arbitrary goal that's getting updated for me, I will either hit the goal that I set for myself and say, okay, cool, I'm done. I'll go play something else. And then maybe I'll come back in the next season. Or I hit the goal and I set a new one. And, that's kind of like a 50-50, depending on how agonizing it was to achieve the thing that I set out to achieve. Right. So
Yeah.
having this thing that kind of like forcefully updates and forcefully makes you want to strive to do something more, I like. And I feel very like hypocritical because normally I hate games telling you how to play them. I hate developers telling you this is the way that it should be and you should be happy for that. But in this situation, I actually enjoy the seasonal model and it works very well for me
Hmm.
because I do play other games. I do like to achieve the goals that I have in WoW. And maybe that's 4 or 5 months in and I can sit it down and I'm like, okay, well now I want to go play RuneScape for a month because
Yeah.
the new League in RuneScape dropped, or I want to go play PoE and then I can come back to WoW and know that I'm not going to be super far behind and having to do content nobody's doing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this leftover perception of this idea that World of Warcraft is the only game you'll need to play, right? I think this is something that comes from just the way people interacted with MMOs back in the early 2000s, and just the amount of time they took. It kind of just ended up being there's infinity stuff to do in these game worlds, and therefore, if you play WoW, you play WoW, and that's it. That's all you play because that's all you have time to play. I don't think people. I mean, there's certainly some people I think that probably still only play World of Warcraft. But I think the majority of people that play these type of games have moved on from this idea of an MMORPG is a great game because it's the only game you'll need to play. And that's what, like, again, I don't think that happened like because of anyone's conscious decision or design or philosophy or anything. I think the design philosophy was a response to that idea, to this shift in what people want to do in games and how much time they have to do it and all these things. And I just feel like if you look back on it and if you plot out the changes in the game over time, like it almost ends up being inevitable to me that like this kind of seasonal content was just going to eventually be what we would eventually move to.
Mhm.
Especially when you just acknowledge that like there's always been a patch cadence. There's always been, so many months are going to go by and then we're going to get a new raid and a new dungeon and new loot, and like that's just the way the game's going to work. And like, I mean, one thing World of Warcraft did at the very beginning is like the first expansion, they had that be a gear reset. Like that didn't, like, that's the proto season, right? As an expansion. Like it essentially is just a long season. And that was in 2006, I think is when the Burning Crusade came out. So it's like, we already had seasons, and yeah, many people say, "Oh, that's the downfall of the game," and so all they've done since 2006 to now is just shortened how long seasons were. I think that's just the way people play games now, man. So like, I don't think you could make an MMO, a new MMO today that is just like, no, we're just going to do this kind of linear progression that we're never going to reset. You're going to have to work your way through it. And that's just what you're going to have to do. I just don't think, I think it might have a small niche group of people that would be like, hell yeah. But I think that the amount of people that they would need justify the cost of creating that game, I don't think it'd work. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, so this is part and parcel due to, I think, just the gaming environment as a whole, like you were saying, and that people are so efficient at doing things now that they reach the end of whatever arbitrary end that you have set, so much faster than they did prior.
Mhm.
And this is probably mostly due to the fact that we can share information near instantly through the internet.
Yeah.
And so that being said, Ashes of Creation, I think, is going to have this kind of model where they come out and they're not going to have a seasonal model initially. So we'll get to see how that goes. My fear is people are going to get their best in slot gear super quickly, and then they're going to be like, okay, what now? And then there isn't going to be a what now. Like, it's your character's finished, you're done. And this is something that you and I have already talked about classic WoW, where it's like you don't have anything that you can continue to do like a Mythic Plus system or something like that. And I think that having like an infinitely scaling system that is ever changing and you can make changes to is what will cause a game like that to carry on. But at that point, you're making changes to this thing and you're probably making them over an iteration time period. So are you just putting seasons light in your game? And I don't know. I guess my argument to that is, yeah, you probably are. And maybe this is partially due to people's attention spans and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily think that's the main argument when it comes to seasonal gameplay and why a lot of games are going towards it. I 100% agree with you that it's almost 100% the points that you said, and not necessarily like an attention span thing.
Yeah. I'm like, I haven't paid much attention to Ashes of Creation, and I nothing would make me happier than to see that game be enormously successful. Kind of just don't think that's going to happen. I don't know. Like, I'm sure it'll find its niche, and it might even do well in that niche. But like, I don't know, man. I just don't know. I mean, there are still games like that are technically MMOs that are just play differently from these central most popular ones, right? Like EVE Online is just a completely different thing that follows none of the rules of anything. Kind of an anomaly that even exists, in my opinion. But so like it's possible. I just don't. I think so. Obviously, there's never going to be one that's like the big MMO on the block. Like, I just don't think Ashes of Creation is ever going to be the biggest MMO. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think there is a lane to be kind of made, and I guess what I'll say is, like, Ashes of Creation, when/if it comes out, I would love to try it and see how long I can last in that game before like life kind of pulls me away from it, because I just have this feeling it's going to be not long.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll see. The other thing that I did want to bring up while we are talking about seasonal stuff is, we do this based on raid tiers in WoW, and now we've tied raid tiers in with PvP seasons, and we've tied PvP seasons and raid tiers now in with Mythic Plus seasons, and so we just keep adding like each endgame pillar into this.
Delves.
I think
you forgot Delves.
Oh, true. Delves do get reset, and they do have new things that happen, and we do get new delves. Mm-hmm. So that delves do get tied into this too. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. And I am happy to see that they realize that each pillar of endgame is going to need this. If they're going to move forward with one, they need to do it with all of them. So I am happy that that's happening. But the thing I did want to say about this is each pillar gets a vastly different amount of attention to it season between season. Like PvP, even though you and I don't do it and we don't talk about it very much, but like it gets almost no changes season over season. Whereas like the raid is a completely different raid with huge like changes in it and everything like that. The Mythic Plus season, now that we have rotating dungeons, gets quite a bit of attention season over season. And different affixes and stuff like that. But I guess, do you think that is a potential problem WoW's going to have to fix at some point?
I would say that if I'm running this game, the amount of attention and time and money I give to the different pillars of the game is exactly proportional to how much people are interfacing with those portions of the game. Like, again, I don't think a lot of people like to say this, but I don't think Blizzard woke up one day and just said, fuck PvP. I don't care about PvP. And I'm not going to devote any development time to PvP. I think that was a natural reflection of the number of people that participate in that pillar of the game declining over time. And I think the reason is, I mean, there's many reasons why that happened. I think one of the big ones is just the number of online ways in which you can do direct player versus player, like, combat and fighting and gameplay has gone up drastically. There are so many games that offer that, of all different types. Like, there's genres of online multiplayer game that didn't exist when this game first came out, right? That just flat out didn't exist and now are out there. So, like, I mean, I don't know, like, okay, if there's any PvPs listening, which I don't think there are any people that play PvP that are in this game anymore, so I don't think it matters what I'm about to say, but I don't think WoW PvP has ever been, like, awesome. I think it was like, so let me be clear here. I think PvPing in WoW was awesome, but I think that had less to do with, like, the core, like, systems at play where people, like, just the direct, like, I'm fighting someone else and that is fun. It's like everything around it made it awesome, but just the buttons that you press to interact with the player versus environment portion of this game just being copy and pasted and lifted over to PvP. I just don't think that's ever been, like, the best version of player versus player content you can have. And so, like, it was novel at the time and a lot of people liked it at the time because there was really nowhere else to get that type of gameplay. And over time, there's just been more and more places to get that type of gameplay. And so people have just kind of slowly left it. And I think if Blizzard had their way, they probably just wouldn't make any content for it all anymore. But there's still a small enough population of people that this is an expectation of World of Warcraft. And so they're going to continue to service those people proportionally to how many of them there are.
So do you think that this is partly due to the fact that the RPG part of this MMORPG has kind of dwindled to almost being non-existent at this point?
I mean, a little bit.
There's no, like, I am a member of the Alliance and therefore I will strike down all people of the Horde and don't come anywhere near South Shore or so help me God. Like, that just doesn't exist anymore. And half the time we're sharing zones, we're sharing guilds now. So, like,
yeah.
Do you think that has kind of eroded away? Like, obviously it has eroded away the world PvP. But, like, I almost wonder if that's had kind of like a trickle down effect to the people who do arenas and battlegrounds now too, because a lot of the people who did arenas and battlegrounds are people who did world PvP and highly enjoyed that. And so since that went away and that was kind of like what got them in and what got them excited, it kind of went away too. So I almost wonder if that's what happened. I'm
certainly not an expert here, but to me that feels like a kind of chicken or egg situation, which is like, I think it's probably a little bit of both. It's some of these removal of the barriers between the factions has lessened the impact of PvP, but also the barriers were removed because people cared about the faction war less and less.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a totally different type of game. And I mean, like, I think it's interesting because one of the things that, like, so one of the ways the gear progression, this was always something that was really fascinating to me because, like, I did PvP a little bit in this game in the Burning Crusade because you kind of had to a little bit. Like, it was part of the progression path of gearing that they really, their early plan for this was to kind of, at least in the Burning Crusade, was to join those two things together, that like you didn't just PvE, you didn't just PvP. These were pillars, but they were pillars that like intersected with each other. And so I did it. I grinded Battlegrounds to get tier gear in the Burning Crusade. I did that just like everyone else did it. And I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. It was fun at times. I think it's always this really interesting thing to me of like putting yourself in a player versus player situation in which there is a disparity in gear, because it's always been just like the idea of it has been frustrating to me. The idea of it that like that the RPG element of an MMORPG and the PvP elements don't really mesh in a competitive mode. Like I think it worked in like world PvP, because like half of world PvP is getting ganked anyway. Like I say half, 90% of it is someone coming up to you and fucking you up when you're killing something, or you doing the same thing to someone else, or like that's the majority of it. And so like gear disparity doesn't matter there, because there's gear disparity, there's level disparity, there's all that stuff. But if you break it down into like Battlegrounds or like Arena and these like controlled team versus team environments, it just always felt a little funny to me that like one team could just have way better gear than the other team, and they've kind of taken that away over time, right? Not entirely, but they have minimized that a lot, and I think that's for very understandable reasons. But it also like means that there's no RPG element to it. There's no progression path outside of just trying to get your score number up. Which like is fine for a lot of games. A lot of games do that, right? There's like that's the game, is trying to get better and better and win more, and so your score goes up. But like it's just in this particular game where the RPG elements of it are still a big part of the PvE experience. It just kind of leaves PvP in this awkward side space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't really have a ton else to add. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't anticipate this seasonal discussion turning into a PvP discussion, but I think it is. I think it ties in perfectly. And it like, it puts on full display.
There were seasons in PvP.
Even talking about it.
There were seasons in PvP before we even like talked about seasons, right? Like the PvP had a season starting the Burning Crusade. So yeah, I mean, it makes total sense.
It just, I don't know. I don't know I don't think there needs to be a solution here, because I think it's working. But I wanted to talk about it because it does seem like we have parts of the community who are vehemently against it, and parts who aren't necessarily for it, but do benefit heavily from it. Does that make sense? Like there's a very vocal anti-season group, but there isn't ever anybody coming out and saying like, what are the benefits that you gain from having a seasonal kind of gameplay loop? So I kind of did just want to have a discussion back and forth about that. Mainly because of that fact that there is a very vocal anti-season, but not for seasons.
Yeah. The one more thing I'll say about it is it does, like we talked about how it kills the world. It kills the world in a very like gamey kind of way. Like I remember, like I was really into EverQuest, and I was really, really loving EverQuest. And I think my friend showed me Phantasy Star Online, which is not really an MMO, but not an MMO. And I just remember the idea of like a lobby in an MMORPG at the time was like one of the most disappointing things in the world to me. It's like, well, it's not a world then. You're just going in a lobby and then going in instances. And now 20 years later, that's essentially what World of Warcraft is. And like the thing that one could say about seasons is not only is it doing that, but it's also adding like artificiality to the world. Like you could argue, if you take seasons out of it and just go back to where there was just content patches and a new raid popped up, like the reason a new raid popped up is because like a story thing happened. Like someone walks into the city and says, Dimensius is coming. Come with me to Koresh and we have to fight him. And that is a story element that the game has changed, and there's new content in the game because something story-wise in the world changed. Where with seasonal content, like it's just like, why can you do these new dungeons now? Well, because I flipped a button. There's no lore to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, it's the new season now. So now all that old gear you can't upgrade anymore, and the new gear you can. And it gamifies the world in a way that I can understand why people feel like that is just taking us further and further away from the world of Warcraft. I totally get the argument. I just ultimately think that it's a good trade-off ultimately, because I couldn't play this game. I couldn't play this game without it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess let's see how things shape up here going into season 3, and let's definitely see how things are shaping up going into Midnight, because, and we don't have like really any spoilers for Midnight, if I'm being completely honest. But what we do have is we have seen a pretty drastic shift in the way that Blizzard is thinking about things throughout the War Within.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you saw a huge overhaul to Mythic Plus going into the War Within, and then you saw them change Mythic Plus pretty significantly going into season 2 of the War Within and things like that. And we haven't really gotten this like feeling from Blizzard that they were going to continue to make these systemic changes and try to put things in the best possible state. Because like in the past it was, well, we're going to fix this thing, we're going to do it, and then we're going to let you play with it for an expansion, or we're going to let you play with it for an extended period of time before we really realize kind of what we need to do to make the next iteration on it.
Yeah.
So it does give me a lot of hope going into Midnight that we might see some more systemic changes, and there might be some more major things that are going to be changing. That being said, again, we don't have any spoilers, and this could all just be like recency bias, but I don't know. I have a little bit of hope going into Midnight, I guess, that if there is a problem, they are going to try to promptly address said problem.
Yeah. No, I think they generally have a very good hand on the pulse of the game to know when there's something that is broken that needs pretty immediate addressing. I think sometimes people get frustrated by their rate of fixing some things, and it's just, everything that you think is a problem is the most important problem in the world to you, but it's not necessarily the most important problem to a developer. So I think there's always going to be some level of frustration on like, why aren't you fixing my thing first? But I mean, I'm happy in general with their rate of response with when things have been broken or when systems need redesigning. I don't know if we would have said, and we'd have to go back and look, but I don't know if we would have said at the end of the Dragonflight that like, hey, Mythic Plus needs kind of a complete rehaul. Like, I don't know if we would have said that, but that has been the goal of the expansion. So it's like the fun thing about watching the development of this game is like looking and seeing them fix problems that we had identified as problems, and then at the same time also seeing them fix a problem that we hadn't even quite realized was a problem yet. But it ultimately succeeds. I don't know. I am very curious about Midnight. We're like 3 weeks away from it now, from the announcement at least. And I don't know if so much of the development time of the expansion has been taken up by implementing this giant new housing system, if outside of our regular cadence of Mythic Plus, raids, seasonal content, if we're going to get any kind of paradigm shifts or not. I don't know. I would be surprised if on top of all the housing stuff, they also did any huge changes to other things, but I don't know. Maybe
10-man Mythic.
Maybe. I think that would be directly opposed to their whole raid buff philosophy, but
I can just sit here and hope, and I can say on every other podcast that, hey, Blizzard, you should add 10-man Mythic to WoW.
Yeah, but, eventually they'll listen, right?
All right, Scott. Well, you and I have rambled quite a bit today. I think I've rambled in circles a few times about some of the things that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead. We'll wrap up this week's episode. So I appreciate everybody listening. My question for you this week is, I guess, one, are you planning on playing Mists of Pandaria Classic? I'm thinking I might dabble in it a little bit, but I don't know. Like, I really want to play 2 versions of the game right now.
It is
so-
very fascinating to me that these versions are overlapping almost directly. Like the mop raid will be out literally a week before the start of the next retail patch. And it felt like in the past they were specifically trying to avoid this from happening, and I don't know what has changed in the data they're looking at, that they just said, just same time, it's fine.
Yeah, I hopefully something has changed and they do realize, like, I think what ultimately it comes down to is they look at their like classic conversion rate and like how many people who are playing classic are playing retail and vice versa. And they kind of made the decision from there, because I feel like a lot of people kind of have one version of the game and they play it because, I mean, the game still does take a decent amount of time to get your gear. Is it less than it used to be? Yeah, but it still takes a decent amount of effort. And to do that twice is not a luxury a lot of people have. So that's probably what it came down to.
Not me, that's for sure.
But my second question that I want to ask you guys is I think it really boils down to a lot of the discussions that we had here, because we talked about raid buffs and we talked about seasonal stuff, and I really just want to kind of get your guys' thoughts on both of these things, because Scott and I talk about this game together a lot. Scott and I agree a lot about the way that we would like to see the game go. So I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you agree, great. Love to hear it. If you disagree, let us know why. Maybe there's something that we're not thinking about. So as always, leave that in the comments below. But you can also contact us over at yellingintothevoidwow@gmail.com. And then obviously if you're watching on YouTube, hi, welcome. But YouTube is at Yelling Into the Void Wow, and Twitter and Blue Sky are both at Into the Void Wow.
Yeah, and if you want to make sure you don't miss an episode as we move into our Season 3 journey, and also all the exciting midnight news, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else that podcasts exist.
And lastly, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on YouTube. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, you can rate shows on Spotify. So please go ahead and do that for us, please. But
only if you're going to give positive ratings. Don't do it if you're going to be mean.
Yeah, 5 stars only. It's like like one of the surveys you get at restaurants or something like that, where if it isn't a 5-star, it's a fail or some shit like that.
Yeah, I'll get fired from this podcast. Please don't do that.
But as always, I say every week, these things help us get more exposure to new people, introduce them to our content, and allow us to continue what we're doing here. So please, if you could, like, subscribe, comment, and we will see you in the comments. But until then, we'll just be over here yelling into the void.